Welcome to Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode, we peel back the layers of a mystery that has haunted the collective memory of a nation. In the wake of the tragedy on 9/11, whispers of hidden agendas and orchestrated plots emerged, challenging the official narrative and sparking questions that still reverberate today. As we journey through dark corridors of uncertainty, prepare to confront a web of intrigue that defies simple explanations. Stay tuned. In the days leading up to that fateful morning, the world watched as a series of events unfolded that would forever alter the course of history. The origins of the 9/11 tragedy are rooted in a complex interplay of geopolitical tensions, emerging radical ideologies and intelligence oversights that converged in an explosive collision of fate and design. This was a time when the shifting sands of international relations created vulnerabilities that some believe were exploited to engineer an event of unparalleled magnitude. At the heart of the narrative lies a bustling metropolis that had long been a symbol of American might and ambition. New York City, with its soaring skyline and relentless energy, was suddenly transformed into a stage for a catastrophic act. The attacks, executed with surgical precision, left behind a landscape of smouldering ruins and shattered lives. In the immediate aftermath, the official account pointed to a group of determined extremists who had meticulously planned the operation. Yet even as the nation mourned, fragments of unexplained details began to surface, glimpses into a story that seemed more labyrinthine than it first appeared. In the years that followed, investigators pieced together a mosaic of evidence, startling gaps in intelligence, unexpected communication lapses, and the unsettling convergence of multiple agencies tasked with guarding the nation's safety. These anomalies fueled persistent questions about the adequacy of the official narrative. Some point to documents and memoranda that hint at premonitions of an attack so catastrophic that it defied simple explanation. There are accounts from individuals who claim to have witnessed odd behaviors in the days preceding the events, actions that, in hindsight, take on an eerie resonance. The background of 9/11 is further complicated by the cultural and political milieu of the early 2000s. The world was grappling with the ripple effects of a rapidly globalizing era, where the clash of civilizations, economic rivalries, and the rise of digital communication reshaped public discourse. In this context, the tragedy was not merely a singular event, but a flashpoint that reverberated across borders and belief systems. Skeptics argue that the layers of secrecy and classification that shrouded the investigation suggest that there is more to the story than was ever made public. They cite the rapid shifts in policy and the restructuring of national security apparatus as indicative of a broader agenda at play. Every facet of the background, from the geopolitical chessboard to the human stories of loss and survival, forms an intricate tapestry that invites deeper scrutiny. The interplay of government actions, corporate interests, and shadowy networks has set the stage for a narrative that refuses to be neatly boxed into the official storyline. As we delve into the subsequent layers of this multifaceted tale, the historical context alone becomes a fertile ground for inquiry, challenging us to ask, how much of what we know is the full truth, and what secrets lie hidden beneath the rubble of that unforgettable day? In the immediate aftermath of that fateful day, a wealth of evidence began to emerge, painting a picture that has fueled debate ever since. Eyewitness testimonies recount the surreal chaos and disbelief as people observed jets cutting through the skyline, their trails of fire etching scars across a clear blue canvas. Some witnesses spoke of strange, coordinated maneuvers, flights deviating from their expected paths, in a manner that many later argued was too precise to be mere coincidence. Documents and internal memos, later declassified from various agencies, added further layers to the mystery. These records revealed discussions among intelligence officials about possible vulnerabilities and the presence of ominous signals in the weeks leading up to the event. A series of intercepted communications hinted at a broader network of connections that might have enabled the operation. Although these documents were heavily redacted, the fragments that remain have stirred questions. Were these mere bureaucratic annotations, or subtle warnings that went unheeded. In addition to official documents, recorded conversations among government insiders have also been a focal point of scrutiny. Accounts from individuals who worked behind the scenes suggest that there was a sense of urgency and uncertainty in the days prior to 9/11. Some insiders recalled heated discussions about unusual flight patterns and inexplicable gaps in intelligence reports. The intensity of these exchanges has led many to wonder if the pieces of a larger puzzle were in place long before the tragedy unfolded. There are also reports of physical evidence that continues to captivate investigators and independent researchers alike. Remnants of materials recovered from the wreckage, metals that seemed to yield in ways not entirely consistent with conventional structural failure, have raised eyebrows in certain circles. Analyses conducted in independent labs have offered alternative interpretations of how the buildings collapsed, fueling a belief among some that controlled demolitions or pre-planted explosives may have been involved. Furthermore, a collection of photographs and video footage captured by both professional journalists and ordinary citizens provides an unfiltered glimpse into the unfolding drama. In these images, the plumes of smoke and the cascading debris serve as a stark visual record of the event. Certain frames have been isolated by researchers for further analysis, with proponents asserting that specific visual cues might indicate an orchestrated sequence rather than an act of spontaneous destruction. Adding to this, a number of whistleblowers and former operatives have come forward with stories of unusual meetings, cryptic warnings, and an overall atmosphere of secrecy within key agencies. Their accounts suggest that the narrative presented to the public might have glossed over critical details, leaving room for interpretations that challenge the conventional explanation. Each piece of evidence, from the smallest document fragment to the most dramatic eyewitness account, contributes to a mosaic of uncertainty, a mosaic that invites the listener to consider the possibility of a hidden agenda behind the tragedy. As we sift through this array of evidence, it becomes clear that the story of 9/11 is not confined to the official reports or the memories of those who witnessed it. Instead, it is an evolving narrative, one that continues to be shaped by new revelations and interpretations. With every document, every account, and every disputed detail, the question lingers: what truly lies beneath the surface of this monumental event? There are those who approach the events of that day from an angle that diverges sharply from the mainstream narrative. A perspective that invites us to question not only the official story, but also the broader processes of how truth is constructed and disseminated. Some analysts and independent researchers point to discrepancies in the timelines and decision-making that seem to defy simple explanation. They argue that the rapidity with which responses were formulated, both in the corridors of power and in the immediate public messaging, leaves little room for the messy uncertainties that typically accompany chaotic emergencies. A number of voices from within the intelligence community, though few and often shadowed by anonymity, have hinted at internal debates where alternative hypotheses were not entirely dismissed. In hushed conversations, the suggestion emerged that multiple agencies might have been aware of potential vulnerabilities long before the tragedy struck. These insiders speak of a system where fragmented information and interagency rivalries may have contributed to a situation in which warnings were either misinterpreted or purposefully sidelined. Critics maintain that this internal discord not only muddied the waters of official investigations, but also created a fertile ground for alternative theories to flourish. At the same time, a segment of journalists and public intellectuals has scrutinized the rapid policy shifts that followed the incident. They note that the immediate restructuring of national security strategies, coupled with the swift implementation of sweeping legislation, seems to correlate with pre-existing plans that had been quietly percolating in the background. Some argue that these actions, taken in the blink of an eye, may have been part of a broader maneuver designed to reshape power dynamics on a global scale. They assert that the speed and coordination of these responses warrant closer examination, suggesting that the crisis might have been anticipated or even exploited by those with the means to do so. The academic community, too, has lent its voice to these debates, offering critical analyses of the available data. Researchers in the fields of political science and sociology propose that the narrative itself is a constructed artifact, shaped by media, government agencies, and cultural expectations. They point out that when a nation is thrust into the throes of a collective trauma, there is an inherent tendency to seek order in chaos, often at the expense of nuance. This perspective does not dismiss the tragic reality of the day, but rather invites a more reflective inquiry into how collective memory is forged and how alternative viewpoints can sometimes be marginalized in the rush to restore a sense of stability. Even within these critical discussions, there is an insistence on the importance of maintaining an open mind. While some voices argue that the discrepancies and rapid policy changes point to a premeditated orchestration behind the events, others suggest that these same irregularities could simply be artifacts of an unprecedented and overwhelming crisis. This duality underscores the tension between the desire for clear answers and the messy, often contradictory nature of reality. Ultimately, the alternative viewpoints serve as a reminder that the story of 9/11 is layered and multifaceted, a narrative that continues to evolve with each new question raised. The reverberations of that tragic day have seeped into the very fabric of society, challenging our collective understanding of truth and governance. In its aftermath, the narrative of 9/11 became more than a historical event. It morphed into a cultural symbol, a prism through which people began to question the established order. This questioning did not occur in isolation. It was part of a broader movement, a shift in how society perceives authority and accountability. The theory, with its intricate blend of documented anomalies and whispered suspicions, has influenced public discourse, inviting reflections on the very nature of transparency and the responsibilities of those in power. In communities across the nation, the psychological impact of the unfolding narrative has been profound. For some, the persistence of unanswered questions has become a catalyst for critical self-examination, prompting individuals to scrutinize the interplay between personal freedom and state control. Others have found in the murmurings of an alternative narrative a form of empowerment, a means to reclaim agency in a world where official channels seem distant or untrustworthy. This duality has given rise to an environment where skepticism is not only accepted but celebrated as a counterbalance to unquestioning faith in institutional narratives. The political landscape, too, has been indelibly marked by these broader implications. In the corridors of power, the legacy of that day has been used to justify sweeping changes in national security, surveillance practices, and foreign policy. Yet, these very changes have sparked debates about civil liberties, the balance of power, and the ethical dimensions of governance. The theory serves as a mirror reflecting deep-seated anxieties about the concentration of power, revealing fissures in the social contract between the state and its citizens. It challenges policymakers to confront the tension between safeguarding a nation and preserving the freedoms that define it. Moreover, the cultural impact of this ongoing narrative cannot be understated. The way that conspiracy theories have woven themselves into popular culture through films, literature, and even art highlights a growing mistrust of conventional narratives. This phenomenon is symptomatic of a broader cultural shift where the once clear boundaries between truth and interpretation have blurred. In this evolving discourse, the theory of 9/11 operates not merely as a recounting of events, but as a symbol of a generation's disillusionment with the transparency and integrity of power structures. It has spurred artistic expressions that capture the angst and wonder of a society at a crossroads, blending elements of history with modern-day mythology. At its core, the theory invites us to reflect on the nature of memory and how historical events are recorded, interpreted, and at times manipulated. The debate extends beyond the factual details of a single day, becoming a conversation about the mechanisms of belief, the dynamics of trust, and the collective yearning for a deeper understanding of our past. As we continue to grapple with these questions, the broader implications resonate in everyday life, challenging educational paradigms, influencing political debates, and even altering personal identities. The theory has, in a sense, become a cultural touchstone, a catalyst for ongoing inquiry into how we construct reality and define the truths that guide our future. In the shadowy corners of the investigation, a series of speculative theories has emerged that diverge sharply from the conventional accounts. These fringe angles draw on interpretations of cryptic communications, unverified eyewitness memories, and unexplained anomalies that defy easy categorization. Some claim that hidden signals embedded in everyday media and leaked government memos suggest a covert operation, one that predated the events of that fateful day. There are whispers of secret meetings between high-level officials and obscure figures whose names rarely make the headlines, fueling the notion that there was a predetermined blueprint for the unfolding chaos. A recurring theme among these speculative accounts is the idea that key structural failures could not have occurred without deliberate intervention. Proponents of this theory argue that the patterns of destruction observed in the aftermath point to an orchestrated sequence of events rather than a spontaneous collapse. They reference controversial engineering reports and anomalous material properties noted at the sites, suggesting that the use of specialized explosives or pre-placed charges might explain the rapid disintegration of the structures. Although these claims are often dismissed by mainstream experts, they persist as part of a broader narrative that challenges the established timeline and sequence of events. Further intensifying the mystery are reports of unexplained phenomena observed in the days before the tragedy. According to some fringe sources, unusual electromagnetic disturbances and inexplicable power surges were recorded in key areas around the city. These disturbances, some assert, could have been indicative of experimental technologies at work, technologies that might have been employed to manipulate or control the event. Such ideas, while bordering on science fiction, resonate deeply with those who believe that modern warfare and statecraft now operate in realms far removed from traditional methods. The notion that advanced, perhaps even extraterrestrial, technologies could be influencing earthly events adds a tantalizing layer to the unfolding saga. Another speculative thread delves into the symbolic realm. Some theorists point to recurring motifs in art, literature, and ancient architecture, drawing parallels between these symbols and the design of the targets. They suggest that the locations and timing of the attacks were chosen not merely for their strategic value, but for their deeper, almost ritualistic significance. In this view, the tragedy is transformed into a kind of modern myth, a carefully constructed narrative designed to resonate on both a practical and a metaphysical level. The idea that historical cycles and esoteric wisdom might be at play creates a framework where the events of 9/11 are seen as part of a larger cosmic drama. Moreover, there are voices from the fringes who believe that undisclosed alliances and shadowy organizations played a crucial role in setting the stage for that day. They argue that a network of global players, hidden from public scrutiny, maneuvered behind the scenes to engineer a crisis that would redefine international power dynamics. According to these narratives, the event was less an act of isolated terrorism and more a calculated strike that served as a catalyst for sweeping political and military realignments around the world. Each of these speculative angles, while not universally accepted, contributes to a rich tapestry of ideas that challenge us to rethink the narrative. They invite us to peer beyond the surface of official reports and to consider the possibility that there is a deeper, more enigmatic story waiting to be unraveled. In the wake of the initial investigations and decades of analysis, new revelations continue to emerge, subtle hints and overlooked details that add fresh layers to the story. Recent interviews with individuals once embedded deep within the corridors of power hint at clandestine meetings, where critical decisions were made under heavy cover. These untold stories have been recounted in hushed tones by former insiders who now, years later, reveal that the chain of events leading to that tragic day may have been influenced by backroom deliberations and covert operations that remain largely undocumented. Such accounts raise questions about long-forgotten communications and encrypted files that never saw the light of day, hidden away in secure archives. With each new disclosure, the tapestry of the narrative becomes more intricate, suggesting that there were influential figures and shadowy committees working in tandem behind the public face of the investigation. One particularly compelling narrative centers around a series of unexplained meetings between high-ranking military officials and lesser-known intelligence operatives. These gatherings, often described in fragmented diaries and declassified memos, hint at a premeditated blueprint, a set of contingency plans that were activated almost as soon as the day unfolded. Insiders who have come forward now claim that these discussions involved not only tactical responses to the unfolding crisis, but also strategic decisions that predated the attacks. The implication is that some in the upper echelons may have been privy to information that was never made public, suggesting a level of foresight that challenges the notion of a spontaneous tragedy. Simultaneously, there are whispers of unpublicized technological experiments and surveillance programs that were in full swing prior to the events. Former technicians, now speaking anonymously, describe the testing of cutting-edge monitoring systems that could detect minute changes in electromagnetic fields, an initiative supposedly aimed at bolstering national security. These programs, shrouded in secrecy, might have captured anomalies that traditional systems overlooked, adding an enigmatic dimension to the evidence collected on that day. The possibility that such technologies could have inadvertently played a role in either detecting or even influencing the events remains a tantalizing thread in this unfolding narrative. Furthermore, new documentary investigations have begun to shine a light on obscure financial transactions linked to several key figures in the administration. These transactions, recorded in ledgers buried within government files, suggest that monetary interests and global alliances may have intersected with the intelligence reports in unexpected ways. The money trails weave a web of connections that stretch far beyond national borders, involving entities with interests in reshaping geopolitical landscapes. Such findings have opened the door to fresh inquiries, inviting both amateur researchers and veteran investigators to re-examine the fiscal underpinnings of the narrative. Every piece of this new information, no matter how minute, contributes to an ever-evolving mosaic of uncertainties and possibilities. As further developments continue to surface from reluctant insiders and newly released documents, the story grows even more complex, deepening the enigma of that fateful day. While the official narrative has long been cemented in public consciousness, these untold stories invite us to reconsider what we think we know, urging us to dig deeper into the layers of secrecy that have obscured the full truth. In this realm of hidden accounts and suppressed disclosures, the mystery endures, evolving with each new revelation, and challenging us to reassess the events that reshaped history. As we draw this investigation to a close, the echoes of that fateful day continue to reverberate through every layer of our collective memory. We've journeyed through the complex maze of events, evidence, and whispered accounts that surround one of the most seismic moments in modern history. In our exploration, we've uncovered a narrative woven with both stark realities and unsettling ambiguities, a tapestry that challenges us to look beyond the surface of the official accounts and consider the myriad details that have been hidden, overlooked, or simply lost in the rush of a national tragedy. Our investigation began with the stark imagery of a city in turmoil, capturing the chaos and profound loss that defined the day. We then stepped back to explore the intricate historical context, the geopolitical tensions, the intelligence oversights, and the cultural shifts that set the stage for an event that seemed, at once, both inevitable and inexplicable. Every documented anomaly, every cryptic internal memo has added another brushstroke to a portrait that refuses to settle into a single, clear narrative. In our deep dive into the evidence, we encountered accounts from eyewitnesses, fragments of declassified documents, and physical remnants that sparked as much debate as they did understanding. These pieces of evidence, varying in their clarity and detail, have left us with more questions than answers, each one inviting us to consider if there might be more to the story than what was officially recorded. The discrepancies in timelines, the gaps in intelligence, and the unusual patterns observed on that day continue to fuel discussion and speculation, leaving an indelible mark on the public consciousness. We also examined alternative perspectives, presenting a spectrum of opinions from those who questioned the prevailing narrative. This critical dialogue has opened up a space for reflection, where the tension between the desire for clear answers and the complexity of reality becomes evident. It reminds us that in the wake of such overwhelming tragedy, even the smallest detail can cast a long shadow, challenging us to reconcile conflicting accounts and confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of power, secrecy, and control. Beyond the immediate impact of that day, our narrative has ventured into broader implications. The ripple effects of 9/11 have reshaped political strategies, cultural norms, and personal identities. This event has served as a catalyst, prompting a reassessment of security measures, governmental transparency, and even our own collective beliefs. As we consider the psychological and societal transformations that followed, we're reminded that the reverberations of such monumental events extend far beyond the moment of impact. In closing, while the layers of secrecy and emerging evidence may never be fully unraveled, they invite us to remain ever curious and persistently questioning. The mosaic of facts and theories we've examined leaves us with an enduring enigma, a reminder that history is often more complex and multifaceted than any singular account can capture. As we leave this chapter of inquiry open-ended, the unanswered questions and lingering doubts continue to fuel our collective pursuit of truth. The mystery endures, inviting us to listen, to wonder, and to keep searching for the full story. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and this has been another episode of Conspiracy Theories and Cover-Ups. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Share this episode with your fellow conspiracy enthusiasts and be sure to connect with us on social media for behind-the-scenes content and exclusive updates. Join us next time for another exciting journey into the world of conspiracy theories. See you then. If you found this episode fascinating and want to dive even deeper into the world of conspiracy theories, consider subscribing for exclusive access to the material they don't want you to hear. As a subscriber, you'll get banned episodes, episodes deemed too controversial for mainstream platforms, members-only bonus episodes, not available anywhere else, extended director's cut versions of your favorite episodes, early access to new content before it's released to the public, and much more. Thank you for your support. The link is in the description below. Join now.